We all know the many regional and global legacy brands and family-owned retail businesses have disrupted their business by going digital. And to discuss how these brands are evolving with changing times, we have Mr. Akhil Jain, the Executive Director. Can we all have a round of applause to welcome Mr. Akhil Jain? And we'd like to welcome Lavanya Nalli, the chairperson of Nalli Group of Companies. And the session will be moderated by Navin Joshua, the founder of GreenHonchos. Also, we'd like to welcome Mr. Raghav Agarwal, the head FMCG and e-commerce from V-Bazaar Retail. Can we have the gentleman two onto the dais, please? We'd like to welcome Mr. Manohar Chatlani, the owner of Soch, once again to kindly join us onto the dais. This session will be moderated by Mr. Navin Joshua, the founder of GreenHonchos. We're having your chair coming, sir. Just give us a moment.
Hi, very good evening, everyone. I'm Navin Joshua from GreenHonchos. We are a leading D2C enabler. But this is less about us and more about these iconic brands, legacy brands. I'd love to have everyone give their own introductions. We're not a very large panel. We've got probably half an hour, and one of them has a 20-minute hard stop. So we'll continue for the last 5-10 minutes probably, or try and keep it quick because I think we are behind schedule overall a bit. But we'll still try and keep it as engaging as possible. The topic is more technology adoption for legacy brands. So we've got, I'll just pass on the mic to each for their introductions, please.
I'm Manu Chatlani from Soch. Actually, our original brand was Favorite Shop, which was opened in 1950 by my father. Soch is a recent, we opened in 2005, 2008 was the second, 2009 was the third. We now have 148 stores across the country. And hopefully still growing. Of course, we're not as old as Nalli's. Nalli's goes way back. And it's been an exciting journey. We've really enjoyed it. And we are mostly in the south, where about 85% of our sale comes from the south, now expanding to the east and north.
Thank you. I think you're very kind. So I'm Lavanya Nalli from the Nalli group of companies. It's a family business, privately held, privately owned. We've got about 40 stores, all company owned, company operated across India and internationally, 5th generation. I was probably the only person in the family who worked outside for about 7 years, came back, rejoined the family business and started the e-commerce unit about 5 years ago, and that's been doing quite well.
Hi, I'm Akhil Jain from Madam. So again, we are a family-owned company. I'm the 4th generation. So we started with the manufacturing of woolen scarves and mufflers in 1939, way back in Punjab. And today we operate retail stores by the name of Madam, which deals in women's fashion. We are roughly 175 exclusive brand stores across the country, and also have presence with large formats and regional retailers.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me over. So I'm Raghav. We represent V-Bazaar Retail. So we have a chain of value retail stores, predominantly in UP and Bihar. Today we're operating at 85 stores, about 6.5 lakhs retail space square feet. We sell into, again, apparels, general merchandise, home furnishings, and FMCG. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we were briefly talking in the pre-session that, the category spread we have here is fairly distinct, but they're not really new age categories, so to speak, which we may see a little more of in tomorrow's D2C track. They have been legacy categories as well in terms of consumption, but primarily offline. And I do know everyone would have a commentary about the moving consumer seamlessly across devices or across channels. for your own brands, would love to hear what that journey has been like, especially with this rush, a bit of a rush in terms of the changed behavior from the consumer in the last 2 to 3 years. So,
Okay. First of all, I would like to tell something about our growth. And this is general with everybody. When you grow from a single store to 2 or 3 or 4, everything changes. When we had one store, I was the buyer, I was a salesman, I was a cashier, I used to open the shop, I used to close the shop. As you grow, you naturally, you can't visit every store every day. You can't even visit once a year. So there is an art part of the business, which is whether to buy a green sari with a gold border or a purple sari with a pink border. That is the art part. And then there's the science part, which tells you what is selling and where it is selling. As you grow, the science becomes more and more important. Art will always be there, but science becomes more and more important. So my biggest learning in our growth has been to concentrate more and more on the science part of it. What his question was, how has the customer changed? About 5 years back, my e-commerce was practically zero. Today, it's about 8% of our sale. I look at it going to about 20% in the next 2 years. And apart from the direct sales on e-commerce, like I said earlier in the panel, there's a lot of discovery happening. A lot of people see things on e-commerce and come to the store and buy, and vice versa also. This is my short observation.
So thank you for that. So I think in terms of the question, how do you move consumers? I think you actually don't really, you don't really move consumers. You've got to move to where the consumers are, right? And a couple of examples that I can give was, and I'm probably dating myself to like 2005 or 6 when I first joined the family business. But if you look at trends, even people using credit cards is a fairly, I wouldn't say fairly recent phenomena, but like that shift, it happened very gradually, and then all of a sudden it was just upon us, right? And I think the same thing happened with e-commerce. Initially, there was a lot of talk about, oh, it's never going to work in this platform, especially for something like apparel, touch and feel. This is what people look for. There's no way that you can recreate. And so that was a very slow, sort of skeptical outlook, both from internally within the organization as well as in general in the market. And then all of a sudden it sort of accelerated. I think now where even COVID notwithstanding, that was really where the winds of change were. So I think in terms of like consumers, it's more of, it's a little bit, the way I look at it, it's first principles. If you've got an eye on your consumer, where they're coming in from, what are the ways in which you can reach them, forget sales channel and forget those formats, even marketing. Marketing now is nothing what it looked like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so those are a few examples of changes that have happened in this business, which have completely accelerated and probably just totally taken over. And if you look at it from 5 years ago to now, it almost looks like an entirely different business that we were in.
So out of the panel, so the kind of category that we market, we've been the most fortunate enough to ride this journey in a faster way because the kind of ASPs we do, the kind of product we do, that's women's western wear, and all the generations from millennials to alpha now have been so tech savvy that the adaptation was really, really quick. And especially with, the marketplaces like Mintras and Jabongs coming in, they're one of the first unicorns of India. So this, actually, helped us accelerate that thing. When this pandemic came in, so obviously everybody from the legacy business were looking at D2C and e-commerce and omni-channel, but somehow because we were offline heavy, so we've been all been postponing it. Okay, we'll do it in 2023, 24, we'll do it in 2024, 24 to 25. But with this pandemic coming in, so everybody quickened the journey. Right. So for example, if I was talking about, okay, my e-commerce share should be about 15% in 2024, 25, so I had to do it right now, and probably we all did it.
Excellent. Your take on the value retail space and
Yeah, I mean, so, again, being apparel retailers, right, predominantly, again, and in the rural parts of India, acceptance of e-commerce wasn't there at all. And definitely COVID, the pandemic has escalated that. It's acted like a catalyst. I would say, definitely in these 2 years, what we have done as a company, we have definitely upgraded our IT infrastructure. We have gone real time with the data. We have had the cloud setup done, and we have also launched our own omni retail setup. So again, the goal is to not miss out the customer, right? And reach out to the customers in the places where you're not present as well, right? So I think definitely, go where the customer is. But at the same time, speaking of an apparel, right? The customers in the rural parts of the India, they want to feel the apparel, right? They like the feel and the touch of the apparel. They like the look and the feel of the store experience. So that cannot be boycotted or, underestimated any given time. So as much as the e-commerce business is booming, the consumer spending patterns have also increased in the offline segment as well.
Well, thanks for those wonderful thoughts, the first set of questions and views. I think you seeded the thought for the second set of questions. You used the word omni. And I don't think any panel discussion can be complete without that. But I do believe in India, slightly different from global markets. In global markets, it's more omni experience. I think the first step in India is more omni fulfillment or omni inventory. But my question is not really on exactly how the legacy brands are playing on inventory, but a slight twist to that, which is, exposing inventory is one thing, but have you seen and how are you planning for what sells online versus what sells online? You'd expose all inventory, but have you seen changes and shifts in that consumption of what works or what sells online versus offline? As legacy brands, I think you'll have a lot of body of knowledge in terms of discussing those, in your internal, meetings. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
We find from experience that whatever looks nice in a photograph sells more online. And 80% of the time, these products do well on the brick and mortar also. But 20% of the times, we're not able to understand. Something sells better on brick and mortar with a touch and feel, and some things sell better online. We still haven't figured it out. We just, whatever sells more online, we push it online. That's it. And of course, there is a huge amount of discounting which everybody expects online. And we have found products with even as low as 10, 15% discount. Suddenly, the sales go 10 times, 20 times online. This doesn't happen in brick and mortar. A 10% discount is no longer attractive to a customer.
Though we're from retail, I think I have a different view of it. And that's more because of the... So I was saying, though we're both from apparel and from retail, I think I have a different view of it. And that's more because of the kind of business that we're in and how distinct it is. So sarees, for example, if you take it, right, most of them, especially handloom sarees, you don't really do them in great depth. And if you look at a saree retailer, the more traditional sort of players, what the consumer wants is really variety. She doesn't want to see 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces of the exact same. She wants to see the same thing, but like a slightly different shade, but with the border different, and so on and so forth. Right? So there are 2 ways in which we tackle this problem of what part of your inventory do you expose offline, what part of it is appropriate online. One is a business call, what makes economic sense, because you do need to shoot every single product, there are server costs, right? And if you don't have a minimum level of depth, you're really not going to be able to take those products online. So one is truly a business call, which we all make. The second is really in terms of a consumer call. What is it that the consumer looks for? Certain tenets, I think, are still the same. So the online consumer still looks for variety, especially when it comes to women's apparel. I think there is the art of shopping, right? And it's almost is like a social or a therapeutic process, and especially when it comes to like women, and even as and more so in products like like fashion, which women's fashion, sarees, and so on. So when it comes to the online customer, I think one thing that we realize is there is a certain minimum width that you need to have. The depth is really governed more by your economic principles. Yeah. But the width is something that is really governed by how much you need to have within any particular category. And when I say category, I mean we group it in sarees at a very sort of granular level. Basically to say, is it substitutable? Certain sarees are not substitutable. Cottons may not be substitutable with silk. Silk may not be substitutable with something else. Functionally, that's one way of looking at it from a fabric. But functionally, right, is it substitutable in terms of if a person comes in and says, look, I want to wear it to an outdoor wedding in Delhi. Can she trade off this for something else, even though they're slightly different fabrics or, entirely different designs? So within each substitutable category, do you have sufficient width so that you're able to expose a level of different price points, different designs, different patterns, different colorways. And from that standpoint, I think it really, and then to your point, you just want to expose it. You take your bestsellers, you expose it to the market, and the market tells you what they like. And now the beauty with online is you can track everything. You can see how many people pick it, how many people click on it, how many of them view it. Out of those who view it, how many of them click on the product detail page, how many of them add to cart, what's the average time that it sits in the cart before it sells out. So these are all things that you get, which you never used to get in offline. Correct. Right? Offline, you only have full price sell-through and sell-through rate, right? And a few others.
Sure. So Akhil, your thoughts on range planning or selection, online versus offline?
Yeah, so while we got onto this journey with a lot of marketplaces, so obviously we were exposing the same inventory to marketplaces, but how the inventory gets sold on offline is very different from how it does online. Correct. So for example, in offline, we are talking about selling 1% inventory every day. This means selling off everything in 90 days. That's the maximum shelf life. So doing, say, stock turn of 3 times in a year, or maybe if you're very good with your merchandise, 4 times. But what we realized lately after when we started collaborating with a lot of good marketplaces, so we brought in a line, we brought in an SMU line that was made exclusively for the e-commerce business, and we were amazed that we were able to do 6 stock turns with those lines, because what happens is how we promote and market and the concept of discounting that happens on offline retail is very different how it happens in online. So the entire ecosystem changes. So as we are manufacturers as well, we are vertically integrated. So what we did is we created a separate SMU line for them, and we curated it. And the difference was it is very differential. And so now, so what we do is now we expose 20% of the fresh season inventory with these e-commerce giants, and then we do about 40-45% of the season -1, and then we have a separate SMU line which works on a very different pattern.
So. And on the discounting, would it be more discounted online?
No, again, yeah. Basically it's a matrix. It's 100 rupees minus a matrix of margins and discounts and everything. It boils down to that part, but it happens very differently. For example, as e-commerce, offline retailers, we have a standard cycle of end of season sale promotions. But what happens with e-commerce and marketplaces, they happen almost a month prior to how we do it. So the cycle changes. So we do the discounting earlier with them, and we provide fresh inventory faster to them.
Excellent. Your thoughts, please.
Well, to answer your question, right? I mean, so e-commerce online, what's the biggest advantage of e-commerce? It's the fact that the customer, without having to need to physically go to the store, is able to scroll through so many options in, let's say, about a few minutes, right? So speaking of us, where we have an average about 40 to 50,000 SKUs in a given store, right? So again, 80 stores, same SKUs are there in every store. So for us, the main thing would be the replenishment, right? If the same product is listed online, I would want to have a constant replenishment of those articles. So again, we have a category-wise replenishment. We have a fixed MBQ. So we work on that. And again, online is, as you mentioned, it's a constant, catalog building process that's always going to be there, right? So you can never get it accurate. But again, you can have a little separate articles for them, for articles like, as we mentioned, high discounted articles.
Sure. So, and you would also have found width versus depth being, primary in terms of selection?
Yeah, again, you need to have variety. Being in online, sure. Again, the whole agenda of customer coming online is about him or her to be able to scroll through so many options in less time. So again, having the depth, as much as the depth is important, the width is important, right? I want to be able to see a lot of options, colors and everything, sizes.
Sure. Excellent. So I'm just picking further on, the previous question into the next. I think we've got one last thought we can take from you, Lavanya, before you want to leave. But I think since we're talking tech, I would think e-retail itself, we are also just kind of saying tech, and I'm also kind of further narrowing this discussion into fashion because that's what everyone is here, for everyone here. But the own website versus the marketplaces, till now we were talking about offline versus online. But now, between marketplaces versus your own D2C, uh, what are the nuances you are seeing, although both of them are still online and probably the similar customer?
So I can go. And so with Nalli, we went online really only about 5 or 6 years ago, which is when I came back into the business and started it. And today you can only get a Nalli sari through the offline stores, which are all company-owned, company-operated, or through Nalli.com. As of now, we don't exist on any other marketplaces. And one of the reasons is also, it is a little bit because of discounting. It's not as bad as it was, I think, in the heydays of e-commerce maybe 5, 6 years ago. And I say this coming in as like someone who's like an ex-Myntra. I was a VP of revenue there, and then right before I joined Nalli, rejoined Nalli. But despite the fact that the discounting phenomena now is a little bit more streamlined, it still is a fairly deal-driven or a bargain hunting mindset. Whereas what we see with the offline stores is it's also not that easy these days, right? You have to physically go to the store. They don't really expose all of their inventory online. You've got to go there. So once the person, but the conversion rates are really quite high, right? Here there's nothing. For you, you just open it up. It's in the palm of your hand. You've got your mobile phone. You open it up. You browse. You can browse a few other sites while you're doing that. If you're a brand that also retails on multiple marketplaces, for sure your customer is going to be doing some amount of comparison shopping, right? So as a brand who operates on an everyday low price strategy and has had since the 1940s, I mean, we were established in 1928, but since the 1940s, we've had like a fixed price only, no discounts policy. We've taken that call not to go to marketplace because you can't do it. We couldn't make the math work with an everyday low price strategy. We can make the math work by doing a Nalli.com.
Correct.
But once you add listing fees, once you add all of these other costs onto it, right? And you don't have the additional ammunition of having a MRP and then an effective sort of MRP. How are you going to stand out against everybody else who's always on an effectively 5 to 10% discount? So that's the call. It might change. But as of now, we sort of took a very strategic call to say, you know what, let's really grow what we are known for, right? Vertically integrate products. Product is the heart of it. And then the channels, we can build the channels the way that we did it.
Very interesting to talk about D2C versus marketplace, and you coming in first and saying, okay, we're not in marketplaces at all. So interesting, but obviously it pans out differently for different kinds of product lines, different kind of price points, different kind of businesses. So would you like to, yeah. Thank you so much for your time and views. We'll just continue for the last question after this one.
Okay, for us, about 21% of our sale comes from our own site. 79 comes from marketplace. Obviously, the number of clicks, number of visitors to the marketplaces are huge compared to our own site. There's no comparison. And if you want to be a big e-com player, you have to go marketplace. There is no choice. There's a huge extra cost, but there is no choice. And surprisingly, we are able to sell, even on marketplaces, almost 40% of our products at full price. And I think there's a myth that you can sell only at full price. For us, we sell 40% at full price, and for it is a liquidation channel. It costs me almost as much to sell on marketplace as in my own stores, brick and mortar. So for me, it doesn't make a difference where I liquidate. And the advantage is that I can liquidate on e-commerce throughout the year. In my brick and mortar, I'm limited to 2 end-of-season sales a year.
So yeah, I think another extremely interesting insight, which is slightly different, is that the percentage of the full price merchandise sales, even on marketplaces, apart from D2C, has increased for brands Akhil, would like to know your thoughts on this as well as your own, D2C versus
Yeah,
marketplace.
so see what happens with marketplaces like Mintras and Ajios and all. See the kind of pin codes they serve, they have, scaled up to serve those pin codes. Probably our D2C will never be able to, scale up to that particular level. The first thing that we have to do with our D2C or what we are doing with our D2C is trying to, get the existing offline customers from the loyalty or the CRM programs onto our own D2C platforms so that the repetition starts happening so that we can actually give them a kind of an omnichannel experience. But with marketplaces, the kind of money they're spending on customer acquisition and retentions is very different. So now as brands, or not just my brand, any brand who's in this genre is now working on the experience that the D2C will provide and let the marketplaces do the sales part. They do deep discounting, customer acquisition. Let's work on experiences. For example, we recently got into licensing with Disney and Marvel and all that. So what we started doing is before launching the collections on our own stores, we started launching them on our own D2C. So that, that started building up a lot of experience for the customer. Okay, you can book it there. So it's a preview, and then yes, the moment it launches on offline, so you will ship it accordingly. So basically for us, for anyone now, is marketplaces will always be a big sales channel, and the D2C has to evolve with innovation, with more of customer experience, so that it can resonate with what your offline stores offer.
So in your case, I think there is also a general view that in value retail, the marketplace model is not viable. Would that be the same line that you guys think, or is it anything different?
I mean, very rightly said. So we ourselves not on marketplace. So the main game I feel is to bring traction on your own website, right? In a marketplace where we understand the quite 15 to 20% of the top line is being taken away by these marketplace players, right? Like Flipkart or Amazon. And we believe in an honest pricing model. So rather than, having a fixed margin on my product where I'm selling, let's say, a t-shirt for 300 rupees on my website, but I'm having it to place it for 500 rupees on an Amazon and give a 30% discount, right? To maintain those same margins, that doesn't work. So I would rather want to maintain an honest pricing model for my customers, use the same loyalty, use the same discounts, and promote the traffic on my own website.
Sure. See, as an enabler, in our view, I think it's a totally different challenge that for value retail, even the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Googles of the world have not figured out how to reduce the cost of acquisition. So I know brands would love to do and scale their own e-commerce, but it's an ongoing challenge with all of us. Last thoughts, probably a couple from you in terms of when we're talking about technology adoption for legacy brands. I'll just like to recap in summary with thoughts from both of you. How challenging is getting the tech stack right for online, because the organization's DNA is different. You were talking about certain challenges. I think that group would love to know if both of you could give us your individual thoughts and we could, kind of summarize and close with that.
I'll take it first. So the biggest challenge with having your own D2C and everything is the resource pool, the talent acquisition to run that. Because what happens when we come from a mindset of an from an offline retailer, so again, as I said in my previous communication also, so the online marketplace works in a very different way than offline works. So for us, probably the tech is there because again we have aggregators, we have third-party service providers like you who do it. But again, then who is the one who's coordinating with you? If they come from an offline mindset, we'll never be able to talk business and create business. For example, if we talk about, okay, my average ad spend on my marketing spend on my offline is say 5% of my turnover, for example. In online retail, it will be as high as 40% to acquire customer. So, so to get that mindset, so what for us, yes, I think resource pool, talent management is one thing that, is very important.
Well, I would say it's really the operations, right? If we talk about omni retail, right, and hyper local fulfillment and all, it's the operations, right? Because my same store staff is, fulfilling an offline order as well as fulfilling an online order. So, and having the shipping and logistics right on the place, because again, reaching to those tier 3, tier 4 parts of India, having it picked at the right time and having it delivered at the right pin code. So that whole operation, I feel, needs to be streamlined. And advertising, right, as likely mentioned again, because the e-commerce, again, if you want to sustain, then you got to have your own D2C platform.
I think music to our ears, and I think everyone's kind of moving in that drift. But yeah, I think keeping the customer at the core is the key for all brands, and then trying to provide a seamless experience wherever consumers are so they can immerse with the brand and actually become loyal repeat customers, because that's the core of the economics of retail. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Completely love the half an hour plus that we, I had your thoughts on. Thank you. Bye.
I request our moderator, Mr. Navin Joshua, the founder of GreenHonchos, to present a token of love for all our panelists.